Shh. Hello, everyone. Good day. Welcome to today's webinar. We are your host, Fiduciary Services Limited. We are your destination for bespoke and holistic private client services and wealth management solutions. We are thrilled to have you join us today as we're set to begin the conversation. So feel free to share the webinar link with folks and friends that you would like to be a part of the conversation and have them join us today. You would agree that in today's fast-paced world, um, there is a need to provide answers on salient issues, and the world is requesting a more holistic approach to tackling the wild complexities in the wealth management field. And that's why for today's webinar, we have selected 5 key areas: family dynamics, philanthropy, sustainability, digital assets, and mental incapacity to begin the conversation from. We have a stellar lineup of expert thought leaders and practitioners in the field of wealth management who would be taking center stage shortly to serve us practical insight, share their experiences, provide us with answers, and speak on salient matters. I am Abimbola Oga, and I will be moderating this conversation with Mercy Edukugu Amina, who right now would be introducing us to our seasoned speakers and panelists.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for making out time to be with us today. As Abimbola rightly said, my name is Mercy Edukugu Amina. I manage the team at Fiduciary Services Limited, and it's a pleasure to have everyone join us today as we discuss the trends and dynamics that are shaping the lives and legacies of affluent and high net worth individuals. We have a power-packed team of speakers that are going to dissect most of the issues with respect to the trends and dynamics. And we look forward to an engaging conversation with them. We trust that you would also be able to benefit from their wealth of knowledge and experience, and that at the end of the day, we would be able to understand what the issues are around salient issues that affect families, that affect affluence and also affect their wealth as well. I'm going to quickly introduce our first panel. We are going to have 2 panels. The first panel will speak on the subject matter of family dynamics, preservation of digital assets, as well as mental incapacity. And to get us started, I'm going to read the profile of our panelists for the first session. That's Dr. Matawaz, Crystal Meyer, and also Teresa Ramos. So Crystal is a founder and multi-jurisdictional legal advisor with Ushi Advisory, which is based out of South Africa. He is very much into the multi-jurisdictional planning, estate planning space for wealthy families. And he works with respect to offshore structuring, asset protection, as well as issues around digital assets across multiple jurisdictions. So we have our speaker's profile very well laid out in the barcode. So if you scan the barcode, you would have their full profile well laid out there. So please, and there's also a link that has also been posted by the team also, so we could check out their full profile and look at all the things, all the wonderful things that they've done, as well as their trajectory within the wealth management space. So Crystal really is focused on guiding clients in Africa, Europe, and America through complexities of international estate planning and asset protection. His strategic experience has contributed to the success of numerous individuals and family. He also serves as a board at Borderless Blockchain Alliance and has been building an inclusive Web3 world using blockchain and cutting-edge technologies. So Ladies and gentlemen, our dear participants and attendees, it's my great pleasure to welcome Crystal. Now it's also a unique pleasure to also welcome Teresa Ramos. Teresa, because Teresa is actually joining us from the Philippines. She's coming, she's with us from the Philippines. So it's such a pleasure to have her. And if you know the firm that Teresa is with, then you will understand what I'm saying. They are such a diverse and very extensive family wealth advisory firm operating out of Asia. So Teresa, is a pleasure to have you. So Teresa is the senior consultant and trainer at Premier Family Business Consulting. She's a certified consultant by the Family Firm Institute, Boston, USA, and Family Wealth and Family Business Advising. She has served more than 80 plus Filipino family business across the Philippines as well as abroad. Aside from designing modules that facilitate groups in family dynamic sessions, in these sections, she runs family programs such as the family culture building and family constitution retreat. So we're going to be learning a lot from Teresa and her wealth of experience. The final person on this panel is Dr. Matawaz. Just like Teresa, she's also in Asia. She's dialing in from Singapore. So Mata is such a unique honor and pleasure to have you with us today. Mata is a Family Office Research Director and Senior Research Fellow, Wealth Management Institute, operating out of Singapore. She's a leader with a stewardship mindset, long-term mentor of young adults and next generation entrepreneurial family members. She's a trained pedagogist and a family business professor, faculty member of several schools and universities. She's a writer, a poet, a lecturer, keynote speaker, and trusted advisor. Mata is a truly global citizen. She's a citizen of Poland and Switzerland, an alumni of the London Business School of Economics and Political Science. She also is also a recipient of the Global Alliance in Management Education program as well in Warsaw School of Economics. So it's a great pleasure to have us. And so, yeah, so we kickstart our conversation this afternoon. Thank you so much, Crystal. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Mata, for making our time to be with us. So we start it off. And the number one question is, in our own opening remarks, in our own based on our knowledge, based on the experiences we've had with families. This is the 8th month of the year. So we've had 2023 run up for 7 months, and we are now in the 8th, almost getting to the middle of the month as well. So what has been the trends and the dynamics in our own practice that we see that is shaping the lives and the legacies of affluent and high net worth individuals? So I'm going to start with Mata, speaking about the issues around mental incapacity for families. So what are the trends that that we are getting to witness?
Well, thank you very much for the nice introduction, Mercy, and for your question. Just a short maybe a correction, or two of them. My last name is pronounced Witz, so my name is Marta Witz, and I am actually right now affiliated with INSEAD, with Stewardship Asia Center, and I'm incoming to NTU, no longer affiliated with WMI. But coming back to your question, mental incapacity. It is a very difficult subject because it is a taboo in many cultures. And that's why it's also difficult for families to deal with, because in order to start dealing with something, you have to openly start talking about it. And mental incapacity is something which is just very difficult to address. But in my opinion, it can be addressed in the same way as succession planning, because it can be taken into consideration as a risk. Yes, you do the succession planning because we are all mortal. And there could be also a sudden succession, meaning suddenly somebody dies, and you have to basically plan for all of these scenarios. There could be also other illnesses. They don't have to necessarily be mental illnesses. There could be also other illnesses that actually do influence, the capability and capacity of a person to basically function normally. And in many wealthy families, I see problems of addiction, alcohol, drugs, cancers, any other, road accidents. And beyond that, I also see, just different conflicts. And there is usually a person like a troublemaker. In research, we call these persons a Frida. It comes from the Godfather, the film. So the Frida effect. So what to do with a person who causes whatever type of problems. So I really wanted to kind of broaden the mental incapacity or incapability into a broader theme of challenges that wealthy families may face.
Thank you so much for that. You touched on something that is very, very instructive, and that is addiction. And I know for most families that's a very sensitive issue. Aside from, I mean, for most families it can be real and very, very sensitive. So we will come back to that, and we will speak a lot more on that as we go. So Charissa, let us hear. So what are the trends and dynamics in family? So this is family dynamics, talking about family dynamics. So what are the issues? In your practice, the last couple of months, what has been the experiences that you've had so far and you've had to navigate around?
Yeah, thank you for your introduction, Mercy. And talking about salient issues concerning family dynamics, I based on the families that I've journeyed with, there are basically about four of these salient issues. One, which is very typical, is the generation gap of the now or the senior gen and the next gen, who may be a millennial or a Gen Z. And this generation gap is, as you all know, is a difference in values, beliefs, attitudes between one generation to the other. And you can see this between parents, children, grandchildren, and their grandparents. And this difference results to conflicting interests, needs, and communication gap. For example, the concept, as simple as the concept of hardworking, can cause frustration stemming from this generation gap. Because for senior generation, typically hard work would mean coming to the office early, working late, putting in the hours. But for the younger generation, hard work may look different. They may mean they're working smart and so on. So we see this a very typical friction between the senior and the younger gen, this generation gap. Another one that's very typical family dynamics issue among families of wealth would be the difficulty of integration of in-laws into the family. Integration meaning the process of an in-law imbibing and sharing the common values and beliefs of the family without losing their own. And sometimes this can be a tricky process, especially at the beginning of the relationship, and there's, around acceptance of a would-be spouse. And I think it's also very a common issue. This marital difficulties, having high conflict marriage can greatly affect all members of the family and spill over the business and the ownership systems. And it's also common rivalry between siblings of the parent, or even rivalry between parent and child can also become a challenging dynamics. So I'm saying that these are typical family dynamics. They're not impossible to overcome, but these are also not very unique. Being families, being owners, having multiple systems in a family of wealth. So these things can happen.
Yeah, very true, very correct, Teresa. We all know that, yeah, so conflict is something that we would have as individuals. But when you now bring in wealth, when there is assets, you know that that's like triple of the conflict. So the tendencies for there to be conflict, for there to be rivalry and just all the challenges you would have when you add wealth, when you add money into the equation. And within families who are largely emotional systems, you just know that that just skyrockets into something else if not properly managed. So that's really what we are going to x-ray today and speak to. Crystal, please kind of just let us know what's going on within the assets preservation space for affluent and high net worth with respect to that digital assets. What's going on? I'm not certain that digital assets are featuring as much as they were either during the pandemic or shortly after. There seems to be a lag. Are families still having significant assets being held in digital in digital based portfolios, or have they moved on to other things? And yeah, so let's just understand what the trends and dynamics are.
Perfect. Thank you, Mercy. Yeah, it is interesting. The old will change, but that's the whole thing with digital assets. Everything is different every day, and every day there's a new product or new protocol that's being launched in terms of that. Also, with the venture capitalists and the family offices investing in new tech or fintech startups, a lot of them have lost a lot of money purely due to the fact that they didn't exactly know how to do it. As Teresa said, the generation disease that we're working with are totally a different animal, if I can call it that, because they're not human beings the way we are human beings. There's no time periods in terms of working times or not working times. It's almost if they work 24/7. If they've got a phone in their hands, they can work. So the landscape of digital assets is the interesting one in terms of, number one, understanding what you've got, because now I've got a family business with a youngster of about 24 having made money in digital assets, and the rest of the family has got absolutely no clue. All the advisors advising the family do not understand digital assets. So there's a big disparity between the guys that knows and the guys that do not know in terms of that. And that also creates a huge problem in terms of estate planning, asset protection planning, and then just basically family succession. Just if I touch on Martha in terms of speaking about taboos, in Africa, it was a taboo prior to the pandemic to talk about dying anyway, where now post-pandemic, they are opening up a little bit more about saying, listen, we need to discuss the succession planning. We're still not allowed in certain jurisdictions to call it estate planning, but succession planning is a little bit more acceptable at the moment. And then in terms of mental incapacity, the personality changes due to COVID strokes and strokes in general is also a huge problem, which I've seen in the African continent. Now, throwing digital assets or virtual assets into it is where we sit with a traditional sense of touchy-feely people and bring them to something where the sun made money basically out of nothing. People do not understand the metaverse. They do not understand virtual reality. They do not understand NTS and all the rest of it. And now we need to basically get that into idea in terms of succession, that if the holder of that digital asset passes away, what's going to happen to that asset? Because most of the time, the next generation, either do not understand it, or if we jump into a generation and going to parents, they've got no idea what to do with it. So we sit with a huge problem between the beneficiaries receiving digital assets. The advisors do not understand how to deal with these assets. And then I'm not even talking about the trustees and executives and probate and all the other stuff that's complicating the whole matter.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Crystal. That's so true. I know that there's a lot of education that goes in with respect to digital assets. And very critical is that you would find a situation where it is the rising gen most times that are kind of the ones that are a lot more aggressive in embracing these portfolios and all that. So there is really that knowledge gap, and I think a significant knowledge gap as well that we have within the industry is also the fact that we leave a lot of digital footprints, our emails, social media accounts, and a whole lot of other things. And so the traditional advisors are really having a hard time, just as you pointed out, in trying to dissect. So how do we bring this into the estate planning matrix for our clients? What do we do? And you know that when we are speaking about most of the digital platforms that we use, we are not the owners. We would have signed up the terms and conditions and given out all the powers to the platform operators themselves. So having to take back, if you don't have a legacy program or a legacy structure process in those platforms, you find out that whatever you have that the family would want to lay hands on, probably you might have to go to courts, and that's even if you are successful. But that's also a lot of the things that we would be delving into today, to kind of just understand how clients can best position themselves to kind of appreciate the work, the estate planning that has to go into the digital, with their digital footprints, as well as what are the measures that we can all take. So thank you so much for that. So we'll continue with the conversation. And Martha, I want to ask you, when we talk about mental incapacity, so so a lot of people are very comfortable making wills. I know that there's a lot of traditional knowledge. Let me leave it at that. There's a lot of traditional knowledge to say, oh, my estate plan that I want to do is to just set up a will and nothing more. But as you have more assets, there is that need for thinking more, and that's where advisors come in and tell you, okay, maybe this is a better structure than writing a will. But what we know is that the basic modalities around writing a will, everybody kind of understands that you have to be you have to be in your present state of mind. There must be no sign of insanity, that you're not mentally conscious of what you're doing, that there's no undue influence, and that so you have those time-tested ways in which people ordinarily would write their will. So when you talk about mental incapacity, when it comes to family wealth management or estate planning, there's a lot of block. The people just put it within that box of, oh, is the person writing a will? Okay, so if he's sane and every other thing and all that, I think that is all there is. But we've come to know that there are issues around diminished capacity. We talk about dementia, and we just talk about the fact that there are times when the matriarch and the patriarch of the family actually have diminished capacity. So as an advisor, what are the red flags that would tell you that, oh, this patriarch, this matriarch actually has a challenge, and so what do you see? How do you evaluate this? How does this come to bear as a family wealth advisor?
Yes, so it's again very difficult, because it's not white or black, and many diseases develop slowly. So Of course, it's very visible when it is in a very advanced stage, but you want to catch it up much earlier. And you basically need diagnosis and treatment. But the thing is that because these diseases develop over time, you need the consent of the ill person to actually go through the treatment. And you see it all the time where people actually deny that they have alcohol problem or that they have dementia problem. So it's usually just the people who are around them who see it very, very quickly. So it's important as advisor, as a trusted advisors, to keep in touch with the matriarch, patriarch, to speak with their surroundings, you know, their children, spouses, and so on, to catch the very early moments of this. So this is what I would say. And the huge challenge is obviously such diseases can impact business operations because these could be decision makers, but they could also affect the way the wealth is preserved and distributed and actually also fostered for the future.
Yeah, so true. When we have clients that have these challenges and all that, they are vulnerable. So is that vulnerability that you're trying to protect against, such that they are able to, I mean, that's the wealth is preserved. So it's not a matter of so the idea of being able to understand what the red flags are, what are the signs, what do you see, is such that the wealth that belongs to the family is protected, is such that the family members are able to pick up the signs very early, and that there's a lot of awareness that this is real, this happens, and all that. And we understand that it's pretty much very silent. So when we have these traits being exhibited, they are very, very silent. You might just think that is one of those, oh, he just forgot something, or she forgot where she left her purse, or where he left his sneakers the day before, but they are much more fundamental. So there is really the need for us as advisors to kind of have conversations around this, and also help the families when these conversations become the reality for them. What would you say would be the compelling reasons? Why should a family be concerned about mental incapacity? I know I've alluded to it, but apart from asset preservation, what are the other compelling reasons that should make a family that has very aged patriarch or matriarch to be concerned about the mental capacity of?
Yeah. So generally, mental capacity of the matriarch or patriarch is very important. It's not only about managing the current wealth, but it's also about the source of wealth. So usually the wealth in families I work with come from business, from one business or portfolio of businesses. And it's usually matriarch or patriarch who is in control of these businesses. And of course, in order to grow the wealth, you have to operate the business successfully. And if you have mental incapacity, you may just take wrong decisions. Or I have experienced this one also. There was a family with two family branches, and the two family branches fighting with each other, and actually using the matriarch in that case to pull the person, on both sides. In the end, everybody is losing the wealth and the trust among themselves. Another thing is that, again, I said that before, that mental incapacity for me should be part of the succession planning, in which you have to plan for a sudden succession or whatever other succession, because quite often, if you don't plan for it, it may take years to solve the issue. So, for example, things that are related to the operations. Questions such as, how many signatures do we need to process a payment? How many signatures do we need to establish a new contract, to exercise the contract? And who are those signatories? And under which circumstances can those be changed? And by whom? By other family members, by trustees, by other, representatives. And this is so important to regulate that, because I have seen a business in a second generation where the patriarch died suddenly, and he was the only one who would sign on the contracts. And then it took the family about 9 months to actually go through the whole legal process to be able to establish other people as legal signatories. But for 7 months, the business was in a vacuum. So many of the suppliers, they were not paid, so they turned away. The customers were lost, and basically the family lost, the operations were on hold for 9 months. So they basically lost the ability to do the business for 9 months, and that business actually went bankrupt. So the family lost the source of the wealth. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did, and thank you for making that practical example. It's I mean, as simple as it is to get a signatory on the bank to make for the bank to honor. It might look like it's such a simple thing, but if you don't put in the plan in place, and all that, then you could just have the whole wealth you've built just dissipate over something as minute or as small as that. And also, there is this understanding that the patriarch and the matriarch carry a lot of social wealth. There's a lot of social wealth that they carry. So, and they've built a lot of social goodwill, and social capital that they carry. So the issues of the patriarch or the matriarch dying suddenly or having diminished capacity, kind of just affects the entire structure of the wealth, the fundamentals of the wealth. Because if it was based on the social capital that was there, what has been done to ensure that there is that transfer of that social capital to the rising generation or to those that are also going to manage, so that the business is able to, or the family wealth is able to be, to subsist and all into the years ahead. So Teresa, we're going to talk about family dynamics. We started the conversation talking about what are the trends that we see in family. I know you mentioned issues around in-laws, the generational gap, the older generation not understanding the younger ones not understanding what the whole noise is about, that the older ones keep going on and on about. We also talked about rivalry, even rivalries between parents and children, and these are real issues. So when we talk about family dynamics, what really are we talking about that should be of concern to families of wealth?
Yeah, in family science, there are 2 types of family dynamics, and I think this is very applicable and important for families of wealth to sort of understand so that they can navigate through these family dynamics. The first one is what we call an optimal functional family dynamics. So that meaning the family is able to meet the demands and tasks required for every life stage of the family. So by life stages, we mean from being a couple to building a family, raising children, raising teens, to launching young adults in the family, to being an empty nester, passing the baton, the whole family life cycle. And the family's capacity to meet the demands and tasks is called an optimal family functioning. So it reminded me when Marta was talking about diminished capacities of patriarch and matriarch, that might be one of the important family tasks in the family life stage of passing the baton, retirement of parents, caring for aging parents. And it's important that families have the tools in order to navigate optimally the functioning of their family. Another type of family dynamics would be the opposite of the optimal functioning, which is a functioning which is unable to meet the demands and thus has a problematic functioning. And I would have to say that family dynamics, in my experience, determine the sustainability and even the longevity of the financial or even emotional wealth of a family in business or a family of wealth across their many generations. And I say this because I remember I did this research, a case study research of 4 long-lived families in the Philippines. And long-lived families meaning they're able to pass on their wealth to the 3rd, 4th, 5th generation. And they still continue to decide to own together, to work together. What I found in these long-lived families of wealth is that they have the characteristics of optimal family functioning over time. So this means that they have a more balanced cohesion where they're able to have policies and systems to maintain a delicate balance of supporting individual interests and pursuing common family goals. And they also have the characteristics of a balanced flexibility where these long-lived families of wealth are adaptable to leadership changes. If in the example given a while ago, if a patriarch or a matriarch suddenly has diminished executive functioning, then the family is able to adapt to that leadership change and structure to accommodate the changing needs of the family. And in this case study, I saw that these long-lived family firms are able to navigate, foster their emotional bond across their generation. At the same time, they have the capacity to change over the years, and they also have characteristics of positive communication skills and family satisfaction that I believe these dimensions of the family help them negotiate relationships and transitions over time. And of course, I would with this I would theorize. Although I was not able to talk to families who end up in therapy or problematic functioning, but I would theorize that the opposite of a optimally functioning family would be families who are perhaps disconnected and not able to recover and repair that rupture, or families who may be enmeshed and there's over dependency and unable to recover and heal from that rupture or problematic functioning. So in a sense, these are the family dynamics that I see affecting families of wealth.
Yeah, so you touched on something that is very significant, and that's why we're having this conversation. It's about communication. And I think that's really central to what you do. That's how I got to meet you as well. So so how do you help families? Because what anyone would want, we would not want we will not want the Logan family situation. So if you watch Succession, you understand the HBO drama Succession, you would understand how toxic, I mean, all what you can say you don't want your family to portray, you saw it in the Logan Raw family. So what I'm trying to say is, how do you prepare your family to be in such a healthy state that with the wealth that you've struggled for, with the wealth that you've worked your socks off, it doesn't just fritter away. And the rift and the rivalry doesn't just pull everyone apart. That because we know that when the patriarch and the matriarch are alive, they have a tendency of calling everybody to order. But once they are no longer there to call you to order, how do you have sustainable, functioning, optimal families? What are the tools? What are the ways in which families can ensure that optimally, individually, they are their own person, but collectively, they are also championing the legacies of their patriarch and their matriarchs?
Right. Ideally, the patriarch and the matriarch would be the glue that will influence family members to take part in giving an effort to work together to work things out. So ideally, a process with a family whose matriarch or patriarch is still around would be much more beneficial and helpful. However, in I've also journeyed with families where the matriarch and the patriarch or the senior gen is no longer there, but regardless, the family decided to come together and find ways. So in the work that I do with families together with my team, we usually, when it comes to family dynamics, we usually do two processes. And if two processes, that's very helpful to make the discussion or the conversation around ownership and leadership transition more successful, you'd say. So the first is guided discovery of individual family members to understand their individual aspirations. Of course, this assumes that there is a third party consultant or professional who journeys with the family in this process. So the goal in this guided discovery of individual family members, a one-on-one conversation, is the goal is for the individual to come to an appreciation or even an expression, an appreciation of what they have, and also a expression of whatever dissatisfaction or need that they'd like answered or met in the family, and at the same time to in their own ways realize how they can proactively and become a solution to the perceived problem. So basically, that's a guided discovery, and the second process is a family process, a guided family process where there is a processing of the shared goals of the family, their purpose of why they're working together, they continue to own together, and also a processing of their values. And this is essential with a third party professional because it helps that there is somebody who can facilitate the family in articulating why they want to stay together, why they want to work together and own together. In addition to the family's core ideologies, which I mentioned, values, purpose, vision, it's also, I've seen work very well for families to have a shared learning environment where from grandparents to grandchildren to parents to cousins learn together basic effective communication skills. Now, of course, they can come together if they have a common goal. In the beginning, they would have their self-interest, like, okay, I want to attend this because I have an interest in my dividends and I want to work this out. So there are differing self-interests that would motivate individual family members to attending family learning sessions. But what happens is that I've seen this to be powerful because the family learns together. They assess together, for example, their communication levels. They reflect how difficult it is to implement what they need to do, and this seems to make family members soften to each other and have more it's like an atmosphere of wanting to work things out. And that especially works in Asian families that I've worked with. But besides communication strategies, there's also shared learning on topics on conflict resolution strategies, just giving them an awareness, just giving them the tools. So in my firm, in Premier, we champion this process, and this process is called the family culture building, where we do this team building things with the family with these specific goals.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I think you kind of touched on what the fundamental key points should be. Shared purpose. There has to be a shared purpose. The values have to be well defined and understood. The vision as well. And very intriguing, shared learning. I'm like, okay, fantastic. Shared learning. That is a very good one. But like you said, there's going to be a lot of pushbacks as regards what would I want to learn with my grandpa and all that as a teen. But yeah, I do understand that if you do work with the right advisors, you'll be able to find a blend, and and that would work. So Crystal, to speak to digital assets, what are the considerations that should be had in mind to ensure that there's a smooth transfer of digital assets to beneficiaries?
Well, the difficulty with digital assets is the fact that majority of those digital assets are decentralized assets, which means that there is not a place where I can go to like a bank and ask for bank accounts and track and trace the documentation or the asset itself. There's also various types of digital assets. So it could be anything from a NFT, which is a little picture, right through to a utility token. It could be a governance token that runs a family business or a family governance system. It could be a DeFi product, which is a lending or a decentralized financial product. So there's a whole lot of different ideas of a digital asset that we need to look at. And each one of those got different permutations in terms of how do we plan and how do we structure for that. And then we're not even talking about the influences of the world at the moment in terms of YouTube channels and Twitter channels and Twitch and all the other stuff that comes into play. So the digital estate planning that comes into play at the moment is a total different estate plan. And as I say to most of my, let's call it crypto-based, digital-based clients, is we almost move back to a written document estate plan on a paper-based document because most of these guys do not trust the internet at all. So they don't want to have their documentation on any Google Drive or OneDrive or anything like that. So the problem comes in with digital assets is the fact that we can't trace it. Most of the time, you use the client itself with a recovered seed or private key. Now, that key could be 12 to 36 words. That could be anything from sail to boat to sea to earth that will recover your specific wallet in which that digital asset is there. If that seed or recovery seed or private key is lost, your asset is lost. Now, currently, it is estimated that there's already 4 million Bitcoins that's been lost due to the fact that these keys have been misplaced and this wallet is basically just missing. Now, in today's terms, that's $120 billion worth of lost assets. Now, in the flip side of that, it is also estimated that about 20,000 wallets are compromised every single day. Now, that compromise could either be by hacking or by putting it to someone else or sharing the key or your stuff which you shouldn't have shared. So all of that comes into play in terms of asset protection as well as international digital estate planning. Now, in digital estate planning, you also should start looking at your executor that you appoint, your administrator to the estate, the trustees to the estate. Do they understand what to do with these seeds, recovery seeds? Do they understand where to go and look for this asset? Majority of the clients we deal with do not have one wallet. They have multiple wallets, and that's purely just you from a risk point of view as well as you don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially with the cyber attacks and all the hacking that we are seeing at the moment. The latest one was, I think it was in Estonia, where a recruiter phoned one of the employees and said, listen here, we've got a new job offer. Please show me what you can do. And they downloaded a file, which was a virus, onto this employee's computer for for them to show that they can code. And with that, they stole, I think it was $37 million worth of crypto assets. So the way or the extent that criminals will go into finding virtual assets is a big problem. And now the reason for that, again, decentralized. Now, people do not understand the fact that decentralized does not mean that it's there's anonymity in terms of it. Yes, there's privacy and all the rest of it, but that's part and parcel of the planning. So to get assets to the beneficiary, number one, understand the advisors that's at play, understand the executive that's at play, understand the trustees that's at play, and then understand what is that beneficiary going to do with it. Because remember, the digital asset could be a wild range of things. There could also be a situation where that specific digital asset was staked, which is basically given to a exchange for a annual yield, and it could be fixed in terms of a period of time. There could also be a smart contract in terms of lending, in terms of DeFi products, where there was a loan granted against that crypto asset that you need to look at. So it's a very complex scenario that you need to ask the right questions, and not assume that people know what is supposed to happen at the date of death or mental capacity. Mental capacity for me on a digital asset is a much bigger risk than anything else, because if they didn't write down that private key or that recovery seed, which most of the guys don't do originally, we've got a problem, because then we sit with lost assets again. And the risk of losing assets is far greater than going from a digital asset to a zero-based digital asset currently, purely due to the human factor.
Yeah, thank you. That's so these are really the salient issues that have come to stay. I mean, we live in a digital world, it's evolving every day. We're getting more footprints, and all that is not going to go away. Yeah, so we just have to make sure that these are the salient issues that we continuously speak about, whether it's having the calls with the clients, whether it's webinars like this, whether it's conferences, and just kind of getting that education out there. So thank you so much, Crystal, for that. Martha, I know that when we are talking about matriarchs and patriarchs of successful families, and the matriarchs and patriarchs that own significant assets and their families are wealthy and doing very well, that these are not feeble personalities. These are very strong personalities. So you're not dealing with, for you to be able to take a business and have an entrepreneurial success out of it, and also be able to, either you have a liquidity event, you have the assets, that business converted into liquidity, and you probably set up your family office and you just continue with your wealth management. These are very strong-willed individuals. So how do you start having a conversation with a matriarch and a patriarch about planning for their incapacity? How do you, because like you said, it's a taboo. A lot of cultures and societies view it, even just planning for your death, which is inevitable, is a taboo. So how do you still come in and say, oh, aside death that could happen, there is also the issue of diminished capacity. How do you do that with these strong-willed and very successful individuals?
Yes, I agree. And especially those subjects of succession, death, planning for your own mortality are very difficult for the business founders, because they are kind of creators. They are like gods, right? So for them, facing the fact that one day their babies may be, taken over by somebody else from the family or from outside of the family, either in terms of management or ownership, is a very difficult subject. And it's absolutely difficult also to talk about mental incapacity, because it shows their weakness. And I have never really come across a family who is willing to call the advisor and immediately talk about the weaknesses. Also, any conflicts in the families are a weakness. And I have never received any call where the family would say, look, we have this conflict and there is maybe that person who has drug problems. And by the way, the matriarch has dementia. What do we do? Usually they would package the problem nicely and contact us under a different subject. They would say, hey, it's time maybe for the succession planning, it's time for something else, shall we buy that business or shall we sell it or whatever. And then once you start digging, and you don't have to go far away, you immediately see the real problems, the underlying problems. How to start talking about that? So how to take the family from the journey of solving, for example, the purchasing question of a business to the mental incapability. Well, advisors are really good at that. First of all, they don't belong to the family, so it's easier for them to talk about that than if we were the part of the family. Again, addressing these issues directly may be also difficult. So quite often, I would personally either bring examples of other families and would say, look, that family also wanted to sell the business, but I know that that family has other problems. And why don't we look at that case and maybe we can meet together and we can talk. And this main issue, the underlying issue will surface. Or another way, I use different games. So really gamification of the discussion, where you have, for example, playing cards. So they don't play their own roles. They play a fictional family, right?
Yeah.
And this gives them the very safe, emotional environment. And then they would say, oh, and in that family, there is that problem. Oh, and by the way, that problem is also in our family, but we're not talking about our family. Let's talk about how we can solve it in that fictional family. So there are different tricks that advisors could basically do, or different ways to approach the very difficult, almost like a taboo subject, either by bringing other examples and connecting them with other families that have went through a very similar process, or basically working on examples so that they don't really have to, that saves them the face, at least at the beginning. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. That's such a good one. That role play. We all want to, masking the conflicts, masking the issues. I think is a natural tendency. Nobody goes out there, like they say, and you just spread out your dirty linens. You want to come looking all well sorted out and everything, but the issues are there. And once you do have those kind of fundamental issues, and you don't take care of them, they have a way of just becoming bigger and bigger. So working with the right advisors, you cannot go wrong. So I mean, I love the idea of the role play and just being able to create safe spaces for people to just talk about what they feel as well. And I think that's really what also helps with family dynamics again, creating safe spaces for voices to be held without feeling that they would be shut down or they would not be appreciated. Yeah. So thank you so much for that, Marta. That was very, very instructive. Teresa, I'm going to ask you now that when we talk about, let's talk about hats and rooms. I know that a lot of people on the calls might not understand what hats and rooms are, but when it comes to family dynamics and how people perceive you, even so let's not, so within the family, how people perceive you, and how you want to get your message across. Understanding the concept of hats and rooms is very important. So could you introduce us to hats and rooms and what families could do or what advisors could do to help families better communicate so that they could stay together and continue the legacies of their patriarch or their matriarch?
Yeah, sure. So what's unique about families of wealth or a family in business is that they're composed of multiple rooms or systems, such as the ownership room, the boardroom, the operating business room, and family room. And each room or system has different stages and needs. For example, in the ownership room, the stages are you have the founder offspring partnership, and that will transition soon to sibling partnership, and that will also transition to cousin consortium. So you can just imagine that in every transition of the specific ownership room, there's a lot of negotiation in terms of relationship, in terms of what's fair, and how we move forward. In the family room, there is the stage of raising children. I've mentioned this, passing the baton stage. And in the business room, you have in the first stage, you have the controlling founder, and then transitioning to entering the family business, where the younger generation starts to be active in the management of the wealth or in the operation of the business. And then finally, the last stage in the business room would be working together, where generally 3 generations are present working together in managing the wealth or managing the business. So in each stage, the family's capacity for I find that in each stage, the family's capacity for effective communication would help each room or system transition successfully to the next stage. Um, a transparent communication, an open communication, a capacity for active listening, where, as you said, Mercy, you have a safe space where you don't get shut down for when you share what you think, and a capacity also to provide feedback, which may be a brutal fact. For example, how do you say that kindly in a tone that is acceptable and where the message is relayed properly? So this is now a challenge for families to invest in their communication process, because good communication can never be substituted when it comes to navigating stages and transition in every room. And depending on the room or system that you belong in, you will also have families of wealth, families in business will also have a corresponding role or hat. So if you're a founder, yeah. So if you're a founder, you have multiple roles or hats. You're the CEO in the business system. At the same time, you're the father or the mother in a family system, or a spouse to your husband or wife, and a majority owner. That's another role in the ownership system, and even a chairman of the board in the boardroom. So and many times your other family members can also be playing multiple roles. So many times it can get tricky. And it gets tricky when family members playing different roles are not clear of their expectations, goals, and intentions in the role or in the hat that they have in a particular situation. So I remember this is a common story, but well, one of the clients, I have permission to share. One of our clients wanted to fire his son for consistently not meeting the quota. So he said, "Son, as the CEO, I say you're really doing not a good job in what you promised you're going to provide. But as your father, I can help you by asking you, what kind of support do you need?" So that helps family members become clear of, I'm communicating this because this is the intention as a CEO, which is competence, performance-based. And now I'm shifting hats. I'm communicating this as a family member, where I normally provide unconditional positive regard to family members. So so communicating based on interests and goals of that role is very helpful in these differing roles. And that it's also good for families to practice transparency of communication in terms of information. So if you're a shareholder but not a board or a member of the family council, it helps that information is available, at at times when you need them. And the process of decision making is also clear, that information is clear. So a sense of justice is established. And also, of course, clarity of the information that's laid out there. I think these help families of wealth and families in business navigate the differing paths and also rooms that there are in these families.
Okay, thank you so much. So we're pretty much running out of time, but you mentioned something that I wanted us to speak a bit more on, and that's related to governance. I mean, talking about the roles that family or the structures in which families can come in and be able to have very open conversations just to help with the conflicts and all the issues that could come up when you do have when communications is not flowing. So what are the governance structures that you could put in place as a family that ensures that family members do get, because there are times when people, I mean, we as if we have that, where you have the patriarch or the matriarch playing on other, maybe inadvertently they are doing that, maybe they're trying to get a reaction, or they are, but those are not the optimal, those don't drive optimal systems where you have harmony. What happens is that what you're doing, you're breeding a lot of toxicity within the family itself. And it's something that if you're not there tomorrow, that would become a hydra-headed issue that you'll not be able to, you won't even be around to be able to manage. So what governance structures can you put in place as a family of wealth to ensure that the communication is continuous, even if you have differing interests and differing opinions? There is that level of respect and courtesy that we accord ourselves, and there is that place that we can all come in, or that or a way in which we can all say we are all carried along, even if I'm not actively participating, but I still understand that I am part of this family, and I'm also being taken very much into contention. So what are the governance structures that families of wealth could be looking at?
Yes, you're right, Mercy. In terms of the differing roles and systems or rooms in the family business or in families of wealth, there is a need for a mechanism for governance for each room. So usually when we journey with families, we look at what's already currently there so that we don't have to deal a lot with resistance. We can help the family continue what they're already doing and find some variations and identify when they want to level up. So with that being said, one of the governance systems in a family of wealth would focus on the family welfare, the family goals, individual family members, and this is the family council. Many times families of wealth have an informal family council, although they may not have called it like that in the same way that we consultants would call it, but informally they're already they have a group that functions like a family council. So we continue with that, and we put structure, we put policies even before there is a need. Another governance, a common governance surrounding the business is the board of directors. So their role is to make sure that they have the best interests of the shareholders, that they're able to create a direction for the operation. Another one would be the ownership group, because not everybody in the ownership group have the chance or the interest to sit in the board level. So these are typical governance structures where each room has a governance structure to look at their welfare and to ensure that the needs and intentions are met in the family of wealth or in the family business system. That is to say that those are not the only governance structures. It depends on families. I have journeyed with almost 100 members, family members. And for this particular type in a big family, they do not only have a family council, they also have a family assembly. So so for them, it makes sense that there is a distinction between the family council, who serves as a family leadership elder type, while the family assembly is the rest of the family who have the qualifications to become members of the family, and perhaps also own. Some families have journeyed with, it also makes sense that they have a next generation committee. So that is another governance level where the next generation have a voice, and they have and they can communicate through that to their different systems, to the board, to the ownership group, and even to the family.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So Martha, just to conclude here, how can families benefit from a multidisciplinary approach to treating the issues around mental incapacity, diminished capacity, or declining capacity? How can a multidisciplinary approach help families to be able to um, succeed where these issues come to bear?
I mean, these issues are multidisciplinary by themselves. So you really need financial advisors, you maybe need some mental advisors, some bankers, lawyers, and so on. Usually the advisors work in teams. So there's one kind of a lead advisor. Usually this is the trusted or the most trusted advisor that has been with the family for many, many years. And then depending on the task or the situation, that person would invite so-called content-oriented advisors, so those who are specialists in their disciplines, so the finance people, the lawyers, and so on. Because the solutions are also very multidisciplinary. So we spoke about governance in the family, but also and the testament of the last will. But also solutions like trusts or a foundation could be a good solution to manage, for example, mental incapability. And this, as such, needs lawyers and trusted advisors and persons who would actually manage the trust or the foundation in order to avoid so-called agency risks. So I don't think there's really any other way to tackle complicated topics in family business or in business families, but to really, have the multidisciplinary team
Approach. Yeah, thank you so much. So thank you so much, everyone, for the brilliant conversation. So I'm going to give us one minute each to kind of just round up and just speak to what we want the audience to also take away. So I'm going to start with you, Crystal.
Perfect. Thanks, Mercy. Yeah, just to conclude our session in terms of digital assets, people need to understand that and don't need to try to do this on their own. It's a very complex field and a very, very, very dangerous field to go in. Which makes it more dangerous is that most jurisdictions also treat digital assets differently. So we can have one country that treats it as a property, another country that treats it as a financial asset, and someone like the UK, which depends on how you deal with that asset, depends on the classification of it. That creates a huge problem. The other problem that we've got is that a lot of the countries are still not regulated in terms of digital assets. So you might be dealing with a firm that's not regulated in any financial service regulations, and that puts your money at risk as well. Then we also need to look at the planning in terms of it, protection in terms of it, and discussing with your family what's going to happen with your digital assets should something happens to you, that you've got a digital plan alongside your physical estate plan, and then intertwine that into a global or a multi-generational, multi-jurisdictional, multi-asset plan at the end of the day, that there's a structured plan to be followed in terms of how to deal with it. Be careful of scams due to the fact that it is a very up and coming industry, especially in the African continent. We see a lot of scams in terms of that. Don't listen to your friends in the tavern. That doesn't work. Listening to friends at a cocktail party normally creates more problems than anything else. And speak to the right advisor at the end of the day that has dealt with this and has seen with it. And as I say, every day it's a new day. There's a new product, there's a new protocol, there's new currency. There is something new. There's a new NFT that was minted. So you need to speak to people that's up to date in terms of what's happening in terms of the digital world. Thank you for your time.
Fantastic, Crystal. Fantastic. Thank you. So, Teresa, 1 minute
Right.
to round up. Yes.
Yep. Okay. So I have to say that families in business, families of wealth, are unique because of the complexity, and at the same time, because of that, conflict is inevitable. So I'm saying this to also create an appreciation of the need to invest in family strategy, because many times as business owners or entrepreneurs, we give a lot of investment into business strategy, but not so much with family strategy. And so I've always advocated for strengthening the family business through deepening the family connections. So and as I know I've talked about optimal family functioning and problematic family functioning. And I have to say, as a disclaimer, that not all families are always perfectly optimal, right? I have just to get it out there that families navigate naturally. We navigate our own families. We navigate between problematic functioning to recovery to make us optimal functioning. And that's the hope, because families who may have problems, who may have issues, can find relief and overcome and these conflicts and these challenges when the family is able to find ways to recover from these challenges and issues. It thrusts them into a different level, more optimal family functioning. So
thank you. Awesome, Teresa. So Martha, please kindly round up for us.
So maybe to wrap up the discussion on mental and physical incapacity, my key message here would be that it is just one of the loss, let's say, scenario, and it should be really addressed in succession planning and in the assets protection strategy. It could be seen on the equal level as addictions, also as a retirement, also as a sudden death. And it's a very sensitive topic that has to be handled with utmost care. Thank you very much, Teresa. Thank you very much, Christoph, for sharing the panel with me. And thank you very much, Mercy, for the moderation and your kind invitation to be part of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this panel. I know that we haven't really gone nitty-gritty into the issues. There's a lot more conversations that need to go on. There's a lot more learning. There's a lot more understanding that needs to go on. But at least today we have done something to push the needle further. So I'm really happy to have had the conversation with us. And yeah, so thank you so much for your time. And we do hope that when we call on you next time, you would be glad to come join us and really share with us your expertise and your knowledge that has been at play from the conversation up until now. So thank you so much. And for everyone that is also with us, it's also critical that we work with the right advisors. You cannot overemphasize it. There's a need to work with the right advisors. When you work with the right advisors, the right firms, the issues that you should be aware of, those things that you should take cognizance of, they would naturally be part of what would be addressed by the advisors. Thank you so much, everyone. So we will just go straight into the second panel, and and our regards again. So for our second panel, we are quickly going to bring on Nancy. We have Nancy with us. We also have Sisi. We also have Sisi with us. We also have Professor Aisha with us, as well as Abdul Hakim Akimbode. So it's such a, yeah, so thank you. So everybody is here now. Yeah, thank you so much. So thank you for our time. I know we're starting a bit late, but please, a sincere apologies for that. So I'm going to read a bit into the profiles of our speakers for this panel. This panel will be addressing philanthropy as a subject matter. We'll be looking at the structures that we could use, and what are the benefits, what are the purpose, what role does philanthropy serve, and what are the other issues that comes to mind when we are trying to address philanthropy. We'll also look at sustainability. And in speaking about sustainability, we'll be looking at it from the Islamic perspective, from the Islamic economic perspective. And we'll be trying to understand and learn what has Islam got to do with sustainability and what role? So for those of our clients that are of the Islamic faith, what role does it play, and how does Islam, how does sustainability dovetail into philanthropy, and what are the things that we should know? So to quickly get us started, this is to welcome Sisi. Sisi is the president of PSASA, and the co-founder of African Family Firm. If you know Sisi, she is a member of the family, of our family here at Fiduciary Services Limited. Yeah, she's one of our wonderful resource persons, and we are always happy to have her with us. Sisi is a well-versed, award-winning businesswoman with over 14 years of experience building her own successful businesses. She's recognized globally for her business acumen and world-class delivery. She has various board appointments in numerous industries, and she's exposed in many global business development strategies, especially in Africa. What I would say is that if you're looking for a world advisor within the African space that is multi-jurisdictional within the African space, you want to get in touch with Sisi. She is that resource person that you know. So Sisi is a global resource who has featured in many platforms, including Athena 40, Forbes Africa, Billionaire Africa, Arise Africa, and many more. She hosts her own podcast, and she's been listed in one of the top 10 podcasts of families of wealth and their advisors. Sisi, thank you so much for making yourself available to join us in our panel today. We're going to introduce Nancy. Nancy, thank you so much. I know we met a couple of years ago, almost like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's such an honor and a pleasure to have you with us. I know the work you do, the work that Chapel and International does, and it is so inspiring. I mean, it's such an honor to have you. That's what I'm trying to say in essence. So Nancy Bixson is the managing director and managing director of Chapel and New York International Limited. She's a highly skilled lawyer with substantial experience in international charity fundraising and law. She has expertise in advising clients with private trust and foundation, and she has excellent proficiency in related matters across different roles that she's in. As the managing director of Chapel and York International since January 2017, Nancy leads the organization in providing comprehensive services for international fundraising and donor support. Under her guidance, Chapel and York International sets up and manages dedicated entities, operates numerous foundations worldwide, and offers in-country fundraising services. She's had an impressive career so far that is 26 years and ongoing, and Her tenure at Chapel and York has also been within that time span as well, since 1997. So Nancy is the voice when we are talking about philanthropy, because I mean, even if it's an international firm, you do know that the philanthropy that makes impact, they are in the local communities. So even if the donors are raised internationally, the funding are coming internationally, it is in the local communities that the impacts are more. So absolutely, she works within, so she is that voice when it comes to philanthropy, anything philanthropy, global, within communities, across jurisdictions, across regions of the world. So Nancy, it's a deep pleasure to have you here with us today. Quickly, I will introduce Professor Aisha Anas Istighfar. She's the Program Director, Family Managed Business Program Center for Executive Education, Institute of Business Administration, Karachi. So she's joining us from Pakistan. Aisha, nice to have you here. Thank you so much for making out the time. Aisha is a specialist in family business constitution. She's dedicated to aiding family enterprises in their growth and successful operational transition. Aisha has deep expertise in family-owned businesses, and she's contributed significantly in numerous business success and sustainability. She has an outstanding academic achievement. Also, she has a PhD from the Netherlands Organization for Cooperation of Higher Education, and also has numerous global awards as well for her work that she does. So it's a pleasure to have Aisha with us. We also have with us today Abdulhakim Akimbode. Abdulhakim is presently he is the deputy registrar for, he's a deputy registrar for the, Abdulhakim is the deputy registrar for Institute of Islamic Finance Professionals. Abdulhakim is a dynamic professional, and I'm trying to get up the profile here. He's a dynamic professional and is very vast within the Islamic finance and Islamic banking space. He's a motivational go-getter, striving for the pursuit of professional and ethical excellence. As I said, he's presently the Deputy Registrar, Institute of Islamic Finance Professionals, and he has been there since 2023. He's the founder of two or three firms that are focused on Islamic tech products, as well as halal investing. He's also a fellow of the Islamic Financial Professionals Institute. So Abdulhakim, it's a pleasure to have you here and to have everyone here as we talk about this very important issue of sustainability as well as philanthropy. So I'll get started. Sisi, please just let us know within the space of philanthropy in Africa, what are the trends and dynamics that we are seeing right now, that we are experiencing right now?
Hi, Mercy. Thank you for having me this afternoon, and thank you to all my co-panelists. So when we're looking at Africa right now, we are looking at it from two different dimensions when it comes to wealth and philanthropy. The first dimension is obviously the ultra high net worth individuals who we have seen becoming more prominent in terms of their giving during the COVID pandemic time. We saw a lot of their giving strategies being towards helping those areas that were direly in need in terms of resources to be able to sustain themselves during the COVID pandemic. You found some of the family offices also then investing and giving towards philanthropy in the space of helping up the smaller businesses and MMEs to be able to be sustainable as well, to be able to continue to run their businesses. So with the ultra high net worth, we've seen more and more of family offices that weren't visible prior to the COVID pandemic become more visible, as well as become more vocal in towards their giving on the continent, as well as into the areas that they have been giving. And ultimately, they're giving more so to areas that need immediate relief, as well as to those areas that are personally applicable to them. As we all know, philanthropy really much depends on what is the family or the foundation really interested in, what are the areas that are of interest. Personally, it might be from personal experience and could also be something that has affected them during their lifetime, or they've seen affect other people that they want to rectify and give towards. Then you found there's another group of wealthy families that is coming up from the high net worth. So that is your upwardly mobile middle class coming into high net worth, and slowly hoping to see them in the ultra high net worth bracket. They have continuously given. They have continuously given across a broad spectrum of philanthropy. It's just that they're not as reported and spotlighted on as we see the ultra high net worth, because obviously they sometimes don't have foundations and are not giving the big figures. And as we all know, media tends to gravitate towards the big figures. But that demographic has continuously it's continuously invested in philanthropy, especially in the education space, in the health space, as well as in crisis. So when you do have crisis, you see that they start giving through crowdfunding, and also there's now setting up of foundations. So there's that sensitization for continuity to be there in terms of their giving, setting up formal structures is something that is important. And I think that's pivotal, especially on the African continent, because it allows us slowly to be able to document what this philanthropy looks like, where it's coming from, and how it is impacting the continent as we know it. And as we've seen, there's been a shift in conversation on what is actual impact when it comes to giving and philanthropy. And impact is looking at the long-term results of that giving, and more of across the board, from the ultra high net worth to the high net worth and to the upwardly mobile middle class. You're seeing that need to be able to align with impactful giving that goes just beyond the immediate need, but also goes towards the future of the continent and the future of philanthropy.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, you touched on quite a number of things here. I mean, what we experienced during the COVID, post-COVID, and the fact that we're having a lot more people that are giving within the continent, and what they are addressing within the continent, health issues and other fundamental human issues, and all, as well as coming to the fore when you have crisis. And the issue of impact is very, very important. I don't think that I'm sure that, years back, impact wasn't such a big deal until there is a need to say, what I'm giving, what difference is it making? And that's where impact comes in. So thank you so much for touching on that. Nancy, I'm now going to ask you that, what are the structures, what are the trends and dynamics that you see within the international space as an organization, as you and your organization work within that space, that is impacting and driving philanthropy?
Thank you very much, Merci, for having me and for including me in this illustrious panel. I'm not sure I can live up to their incredible abilities and experience. However, over the last 40 years that I've been doing philanthropy, starting as an estates and trust lawyer, it's very interesting because we are seeing, of course, when we talk about trends, dynamics, etc., we're seeing both similarities and differences around the world. So we see that in part of the world, there's almost an exhaustion of having setting up foundations. And this donor advised fund, which we offer through our 6 foundations, is something that we're seeing people wanting to do because they still get the name recognition, but they just don't want to deal with the legal aspects of things. And that, in a weird way, donor advised funds have really taken on a life of their own. You know, you can now sit on a panel about how to fundraise from donor advised funds, but yet donor advised funds are really only a charitable bank account, that just ones that people don't have to do all the charitable activities and regulatory things. So I think that's one thing that we're seeing, is just this whole, and the idea, I mean, obviously it's one of those things that started in America for US tax purposes. And as it's come around the world, it's starting to change and mutate into what's appropriate, which it should do, thank God, for those people that are looking at it from very different areas. So I think that's one thing, is this donor advised fund idea. Another one is that there is, in the whole structures, is, and you talked about it a bit on the first group, which is this whole thing of how you deal with families, because as some of these ultra high net worth families and high net worth families wander around the world, they leave assets and tax positions in lots of different jurisdictions. And setting up something which is beneficial in one country just may not work for your child or your grandchild who wants to support the family trust in a different jurisdiction. So I think that's another thing we're seeing, is how do you really bring all of those needs for a very global family together in terms of what kind of legal structures there should be. And that's always important. I mean, tax is important, but it's not determinative. And sometimes you also find that in some families, you know, they have one global entity which gives things, and that then goes back to the whole issue of how do you work with a very different generations and their needs, versus sometimes you find families that have really brought their charitable giving and their philanthropy into lots of different structures, because you may have a Gen Z who's really looking at impact investing, whereas you're looking at the grandparents who are still looking at old style philanthropy of just trying to ensure that that they've done the right, you know, that they're giving money away because that's what they're used to doing and that's what they seem to. So I think that the real thing about structures is that it's the donor advised funds, and also that there are families are starting to see multi structures within one stream of philanthropy to take advantage of all the various opportunities that there are. That's it for me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nancy. You really touched on something that is pretty much very instructive, and that's the exhaustion with respect to the traditional philanthropy structures that we put in place. And one of that is the foundation, and just that whole administrative process that goes into it. So the donor advised funds are more or less like a much more expanded, a much more streamlined, although we know that there are issues. We would speak more about that, but it's just pretty very instructive that one of the reasons why there's a lot of embrace of the donor advice fund is just that not wanting to go into the traditional ways in which we have established and held and managed philanthropic initiatives. So that's very instructive. So we'll come back on speaking more about what donor advised funds are, and really talk about how they work and how you've seen them work, and what are the multi-structures that are embedded within it, that gives as much options to individuals and families of wealth. So thank you for that, Nancy. Yeah, Professor Aisha, thank you for joining us once again. I'm going to ask you now, when we speak about the subject of sustainability, that within an Islamic context and in the light of the maqasid of Sharia, what are the salient concerns and the issues that arise with respect to sustainability from an Islamic wealth perspective?
Good afternoon, everyone. My fellow panelists, thank you, Mercy, for inviting me to this esteemed panel. I think that's a very good question to start off the conversation on Islamic wealth management. With regards to Islam, when we look at wealth, wealth is bestowed by the Creator to mankind for use in their lifetime. So wealth is to be used and utilized and managed as stewards and custodians. Wealth is not inherited per se in the Islamic context. So humankind would use this wealth with respect to Islamic principles, with having used the resources judiciously, ethically, again in line with the Islamic Sharia principles. I won't go too much into the jargon or the specific Islamic terminology, but I just like to touch upon a concept where Islam moves away and transcends from the 3M model, or me, my, and myself, to we, us, and the community. So there is a lot of emphasis on wealth not just being created or being used for the individual benefit. Rather, the pursuit of creating wealth or wealth creation is for the benefit, judicious benefit, ethically responsible benefit of the individual. But the emphasis is beyond an individual to the benefit of others and the community, and even in a greater sense, the environment and everything around. So it's a very holistic concept of wealth as with respect to Islam.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, so Abdul Hakim, we are going to speak about Islamic philanthropy because this really, aside from, as Aisha has said, when you're talking Islamic wealth, it is not about me, my, and myself. It is really about we, us, and the community. So integral to Islamic wealth management is the concept of philanthropy. Is so integral, and we all know that. So on the subject of this Islamic philanthropy, how can affluent and wealthy Islamic persons or individuals or families ensure that their philanthropic efforts remain adaptable and responsive to changing environmental and social needs over time? So
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
You're audible. I can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mercy, for the invitation. And I'm delighted and thrilled to be.
Oh, you have to do something to your. You have to do something to your volume. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, better. Yeah,
okay.
far better. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you for inviting me and for sharing the panel of discussion with eminent and more versatile people around the world on this subject. And I'm going to pick from where Professor Aisha stopped, and that is trying to look at what Islam has given as far as philanthropy is concerned. And this actually dates back to the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, when while he was alive, we can trace philanthropy back to him, because since when he has been trying to raise people into Islam, he has practiced that with his followers. And we can cite Usman bin Affan, one of his companions, who also had part of those legacy. But when we come back to our own balance, when we look at the reality, when we look at our own situation, and also when we look at the fact that the world is changing and the need of people are also changing. Gone are those times that the need of people will just be to have their hand on maybe a mirror, or to just lay their hands on a bicycle. The needs are changing from technological needs to economical empowerment to education and the likes. So for Muslim philanthropy, who would want to have a sort of legacy that is suitable to the reality, I'm going to speak or touch on few things which basically speak to how that can be achieved. And the first thing is education. A lot of people, if I may say, or even Muslims, are not aware of the Islamic injunction as far as philanthropy is concerned. So they just want to do it, but they don't know how well to do it. And this is basically because they do not have the knowledge of the religion in depth, or the fact that they just want to do it the conventional way. But when we look at how you can achieve that, the first one is education, which is trying to ensure that you know what your religion has said about this pact, and the fact that Islam is a way of life that touches on every aspect of our life. So it also touches about philanthropy. So how do you do it? You need to be educated about it. That is the first thing to work on. And secondly is to know about the reality. What do people need? You can't be giving people $1 when they actually need education. That is not matching. So you need to know that what you are giving is matching the need of the people you are giving it to. And for you to do that, you also look at the fact that you want to ensure that if you are doing it, it is in three ways. The first one is if you want to do it on your own. You have the money, you want to set up your own foundation, which is to be run by yourself or by your children. That is one way to go about it. And if that is the way you want to go about it, it means that all decisions will be rallied around you and your own interests. So if other people, if other philanthropy or other foundation are focusing on education, you might say you want to focus on health. You might say you want to focus on economic empowerment. So in that way, if it is individual based, that means that all decision lies with you. Secondly, to have a sustainable and philanthropy is to, if you are not running it yourself, is to call on the expertise, people that are experts in this field, just like the Fiduciary Service Limited, which is focused on this kind of specialized service. You call on them, let them take you through how to set it up and how to have a sustainable and impactful foundation. That is the second way. The third one, if you may allow me, is to speak around where you actually set aside a portion of your wealth and you hand it over to experts who are basically doing that. You hand over that wealth to them, they run it in a sustainable manner whereby it generates income from time to time, and they also determine who to benefit from whatever it is that you are giving out. That way, you are not concerned. You are concerned, but you are not in the operation, the day-to-day operation of it. You can seek for information as far as the development is going. You can as well monitor. You can as well make suggestion, but you allow them to practically carry on the activity. That way, it becomes sustainable, and that way, it becomes applicable to the reality on ground.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for expanding on it. And I'm sure we can see the similarities between even the Islamic philanthropic initiatives and also the conventional ones. Like what you just said, the last thing you said about giving the assets or giving the endowment is similar to what Nancy had introduced as regards donor advised funds. So we can see that there are similarities, although Islamic philanthropy would be speaking from the point of the religion and all that. So, Sisi, we are going to turn to you now. Talk to us about the rising generation and philanthropy. How do they view it? And is it of interest? Is it something that if the patriarch or the matriarch are not actively pursuing and trying to get them to do? Is it something that you've seen that the rising generation are actually picking up on their own and using that as a voice for change in their communities?
Thank you for that question, Mercy. So with the rising generation, without using a blanket statement, because obviously you have different demographics, different interests, and different cultural inclinations across the board on the continent, and the African continent is vast. But what we have seen, especially taking from the conversation that happened before around governance, philanthropy has become the cornerstone to building good family governance, because it's a space where the current generation can engage the rising generation, and the rising generation can engage the current generation and get to truly understand the issues that matter to each sides of the conversation. So when you're embarking on your governance structures, you obviously have to focus on shared history, shared values, and shared vision for the future. And with most families, there's a reluctance to speak on governance because it seems very complex. But when you engage it from a philanthropic point of view, you are looking at the work that's already being done by the current generation, or the work that the rising generation is interested in engaging in terms of philanthropy, and having to set up some sort of structural way of giving that money in a responsible way, in a way that's transformational, and in a way that is impactful and is meaningful to the givers themselves, which is usually the family. And so to get to that point, there has to be that discussion where we sit down and we look at what is influencing our need to give. Why do we want to give? How much do you want to give? Where do we want to give? And what is the long-term foreseeable future of this giving? And I think for current gens, it has become a space where they can truly understand their next gens, because when we look at the business system as the core focus of wealth, we are looking at how succession can be a contentious issue for all generations. But when we're looking at giving, we're looking at how can we collaborate together to be able to make life better for our communities, as well as to be able to create some sort of sustainable change, or to help towards the combating of something that is plaguing our communities and our societies. So it's a moment where everybody in the family looks beyond themselves and their personal needs, and looks at the communities around them that the family serves, or that looks up to the family. And in that space, that's when you see there is that ability to engage the next gens. You see there's the ability for the current gens to also see the viewpoint of the next gens. And then ultimately there is that ability to then say, how can we have continuity? And the succession conversation becomes a lot easier. For families that haven't engaged in that process from that viewpoint, you find that the issues are still very much contentious, because they're inwardly focused, they're self-focused. And with the next gens, it also gives them the opportunity to prove to the current gens that they are able to handle projects and bring them to fruition. They're able to present on things that truly matter to them, and then take them to a space where they are now able to allocate funds and get those funds to actually become meaningful and impactful going into the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Such, such enlightening take on that. I mean, just to understand that in managing even family dynamics, in managing the conflict you would have with family, you have to be outward looking. So if you are a family that is just self-focused and all that, definitely you would have those dynamics and conflict as part of your day-to-day. But when you harness the collective power you have and become outward focused, trying to give back to your community, trying to articulate how you want to impact your community and create lasting impact in the lives of people, then that gives you the room for you to build better forward as a family. So very, 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 very instructive. Thank you for that, Sisi. Nancy, we could see from our conversation with Professor Aisha as well as Adu Lakim that your donor advice form is more or less like a structure that cuts across both the conventional and, if you want to put it again, the religious or the Islamic um, practices. So I want you to talk to us about donor advice fund, because I know it's something you're very passionate about. I want you to discuss to us. So this structure that wealthy families can adopt if they don't want to be bedeviled with the day-to-day logistical issues and everything, how best, what is this structure and how best can it be tailored to actually be impactful? Because we do know donor advice funds, just like you alluded to when we started the conversation, they came from the US. They were addressing specific issues. They came from the US. We have it being used as a structure in the UK, I bet with a lot of differences as against how it's used in the US. But we still know that there are lots of funds that are trapped in donor advice funds that haven't gone, that haven't made any impact whatsoever. So as a philanthropic advisor, as someone who sits and just thrives within the philanthropic space, trying to get donors across different jurisdictions, what is the best way in which donor advice funds can be structured and they can be impactful for both the families, the individual, and also the community at large?
Thank you very much. I think the important thing to remember about donor advised funds is that they are literally a bank account. They in the and of themselves do not create any good in the world. And I think we've actually seen in the US context that as $10 billion is of charitable money is sitting in them, they actually can be a force for ill because the money isn't being used for charitable purposes. So basically, the donor advised fund, of course, is just what that means is that you've got a fund with another foundation. So you have to, or another charity. So we have 6 charities around the world, and those that want to give in that jurisdiction for whatever reason, either because they have finance there, they want to give tax effectively, whatever the reason, they can set up a fund and then they can give the money away when they want to. So it just means that you can focus then on what you're trying to accomplish rather than having to worry about having somebody who's filing tax returns, who's doing the accounts, who's doing all that sort of thing. So I'm actually just the opposite. I'm not a lover of donor advised funds. I think that they do serve a really important purpose going forward, but only if the money actually gets out of the fund into doing good. And we try to say in all of ours that you've got to give away the money within 5 years. You can keep putting more in, but we're trying definitely not to ensure that people are not using them just to take a tax benefit and then sit it there for no good reason. And I think that's very interesting, particularly when you're just talking about the sort of next generation people, because they are very much, I mean, obviously, when we say they are like everything, a group that has got a variety of interests and a variety of situations. You have those that come from generations of wealth. And that's the one we're very much seeing is the group that wants to be much more involved in their philanthropy rather than just give money away. And we're also seeing young people that are setting up companies, startups, wanting to embed philanthropy in that startup. And so we're also seeing startup companies wanting to give money, to put money into a donor advised fund, not because of necessarily the tax and not even because they want to not have to have a company foundation, although that is one reason, is because then they don't have the company foundation, and that gives them a way of putting money into that. I spoke to somebody yesterday, as a matter of fact, a startup company. They want a donor advised fund. They're going to put money into it so they can even out their giving, so that they can have long-term giving without the vicissitudes of a fairly new startup company, which one year has got a lot of extra money and the other year doesn't. And then they also want to involve their employees. So it's a charitable way to get money from their employees and also from their stakeholders. So the donor advised fund in that situation works I actually am in favor of, very much so, because it does allow a company, for example, to really embed the philanthropy whilst they're really, particularly the startups, when they're thinking about trying to get the business going, whilst they're waiting, they can start with philanthropy instantly without having to worry about it. And they will never need their own foundation. So I think it's a very useful tool when used appropriately, but certainly not where money just has been given into it and it sits there. That would be my disagreement with donor advised funds.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think anyone is going to disagree with that. I don't think so. I think those funds need to be used, and we shouldn't just have clients take the benefits, the tax benefits of that, and those funds don't get used. So yeah, and I think that's really another reason why there's a lot of conversation around it. There has to be that continuous conversation around it to ensure that you don't just use the vehicle, you ensure that the vehicle is also making impact in the community. Fantastic insights as regards what the rising generation is doing with philanthropy and how they're also using donor advised funds and embedding philanthropy into their own business initiatives. Very, very insightful as well. So thank you so much for that, Nancy. So Prof, Aisha, we've been having a conversation around giving back, and I know that even as a fundamental concept within the Islamic space, it is all about the fact that you are a trustee of whatever it is you have on earth. So the assets are not yours; you are holding it for others. Although, just like Abdulhakim alluded to, there's a lot of education that still needs to go in. People still need to be aware. The Muslim faithful, those that practice Islam, need to be aware that within our religion, this is what we should be doing with our assets. So I want to ask you about short-term and long-term. So when within the speaking about Islamic wealth management, how do you balance, how do you tell a client or a family to balance their short-term and long-term financial goals with respect to ensuring that the assets there is a longer term view as against it just being me, mine, and myself? Because like Abdul Kalim said, there is still a huge gap between us getting to we, us, and the community. There is that significant gap. So how do you balance that? Because when you're talking long term, you're talking sustainability, that's when you could bring in a lot of good that you could do for the community. So how do you advise families of wealth in being able to balance their wealth management strategies so that it's of benefit to the community?
Good question, Amina. I think, Mercy Amina. I think for families and business, it's very important to pursue business together with a purpose other than the pursuit of wealth. just the pursuit of wealth. So governance, instituting governance is what balances the family needs and wants and the business needs and wants along with the context of the community. So what's important is that the family has a purpose which is bigger than their own fulfillment or their own betterment. And sustainability is enmeshed, or it's in it's inside the Islamic wealth management concept, in the sense that we are again thinking of a cause that is bigger than who we are. I'll give you an example of a family business owner that I happened to interact with, and it was just very inspiring that when I asked him what is his purpose for his mission or his purpose for the family business, he said that I would like for every single one of my employees to have a certain quality of life or a certain lifestyle, a certain asset class, a certain secured future for not only himself and his children. So it was beyond the creation and preservation of wealth with respect to his own family, but rather other stakeholders such as employees, or even if we're talking about ESG, the bigger community at large.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So really is a journey. It really is a journey, and that journey is a journey to find purpose, and in finding that purpose, ensure that that's what is driving what you do, as against it being the wealth acquisition, but more or less like the purpose is the one that drives you, that is the driving force between how you allocate your wealth and what importance you play on the wealth that you've been given. So thank you for that, Prof. Abdulhakim, I'm going to ask you, the rising gen, the next generation, and all that, how do you communicate? Because it's easy for us, so the patriarch and matriarch, so the wealthy Islamic families that are headed by patriarch and matriarchs, those patriarch and matriarchs are not always going to be with us forever. At the point in time, they are going to go and leave this earth. How are the rising gen within the Islamic community? How have you seen them embrace the concept of philanthropic? What are the things that they are doing? What are the structures? What are the ideas that they are bringing to birth?
Thank you very much once again. And many of so I'm going to be writing on that. And I'm also going to be putting in one or two to answer the question. When we look at the rising generation, how are they able to fit in, and how are we communicating the importance of sustainable wealth management, the practices, how are we communicating that to them, and how are we also giving a sort of advocacy for the positive change in the community? I think the first bit of it is the fact that we have to live by example. Because the best way to change people's behavior is easily communicated by when they see you doing it. How are you able to? So the message to a lot of wealthy Muslims out there is that if you want the world to change in future, you need to change your own world now. And how do you need to change your own world now? It's by giving, it's by spending, it's by reaching out to people who are out there. And that is how people in my generation, people like myself, can emulate you to say that, oh, I want to be like Dangote. He has a foundation. I want to be like Tony Edumelu, is impacting African generation. I want to be like, there is this person in the Middle East, I think in Dubai, who has a very large fund that he also reached out to a lot of people. So this is living by example. That is the first thing. The second thing is that there's need, if we want to change the future, we want to actively do that by mentorship. We need to mentor people. And that is you trying to build a replica of yourself. You trying to tell people that, hey, I'm Sisi, this is who I am at age 42, this is what I've been able to achieve. You can achieve that much more easier at age 32. And that is through mentoring. And by mentoring, you are able to narrow the gap between people's achievements. You are able to give to them your experience such that they don't make the mistake that you have made when you were 35. And also, you want to be, permit me to mention Nancy, who has been in the industry for several decades, who is also an embodiment of expertise as far as this subject is concerned. She also wants to replicate herself both within our community and also outside our community. And that is, we trying to consciously create that change that we actually wanted in the world. And through grooming, we are able to achieve that. And again, not just by grooming, whatever businesses we are also setting up is not a bad idea if we also set up a sort of foundation alongside, not because we don't want to be taxed, but because we want to make an impact. So, and by doing this, we are able to set aside a particular fund that we use to impact the society which we operate from, pardon me. And another thing is the fact that when we are grooming, we are educating, and we are also trying to tap into our network, both within and outside, to see how we can work hand in hand to benefit society at large. And I think with that, we can inculcate into this present generation and also communicate to them in a practical form how they can also make that differences that we all advocate for.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you really did hit the point there with how the engagement, learning by example, that's such a very good one, as well as the mentorship and the grooming that goes in as well. So there is really good hope for the future. So that's really encouraging to hear. Nancy, I'm going to ask you now, within the African context, do we come back to evaluate the success of our philanthropic initiatives? Because I know that more often than not, the givings are not structured. So for anyone that wants to initiate a giving or a philanthropic initiative, or families, it could be individuals or it could be families, what tools or framework can they use to evaluate the success? And is it necessary to even come at it from an evaluation perspective to assess what the impact is? Of what benefit is it?
Well, I mean, I think that everyone would agree that that philanthropists want to see a benefit. I mean, that's why they are in philanthropy, is because they want to do some good in the world. There's a vast difference between the amount of evidence of success that is available. Everything from very structured. I mean, there's increasingly numbers of people who are trying to digitize, impact. So they're trying to see if they can actually produce, spreadsheets of how a charity is performed. But I think it's that very difficulty of trying to provide impact and assessment of that makes again the younger people really want to be more involved with the charity rather than just throwing some money and then say, tell me that you sent 3 children to school. that they really are trying to be, they want to be much more involved. They want to be on the board. They want to be involved. They want to set their own charities. So that, yes, all of the various methods, and I think that your academics will be able to much better talk about some of the impact that they do, is incredibly important in helping to frame the success or failure of what's happening. But I think the other side of that is the human involvement in what's absolutely happening, and also people's want and desire to want to do things, as you've talked about, in their own community, within their own needs. If you have a family member who's had problems with something, a lot of times that's something where the family then rallies around to help other families in that position, so that they're able to actually help evaluate things much better, because they really understand the problem. And it's all about understanding the problem that you can really self-evaluate, as well as looking at all the various incredibly important external evaluation tools that are used.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Nancy. So, Sissy, I'm going to almost ask you the same question. How do we measure effectiveness of the giving? And is it necessary? Is it something that we should be actively pursuing? I know Nancy had mentioned the fact that because of this issue, a lot of the rising gen want to be involved. They want to set up their own structures because that gives them control. But if you use like the donor advised fund structure, and you're not actively managing your donations, but you're relying on others, should you be concerned about impact? Should you be concerned about the effectiveness of your giving? And is there any reason for you to want to be interested in it?
I think ultimately when it comes to giving, if it is true giving and true philanthropy, which is outside trying just to get tax breaks and advantages that will help us financially, and it's an outward search to help the communities that we serve, we have to look at how families of wealth have gained their wealth. And it's mostly through support of their businesses in the communities that their businesses are set up in, or the countries that their businesses are set up in, where they operate. Sometimes it's people that are known to them. Sometimes their businesses have grown to a global stratosphere, and they serve so many communities. And when they started their businesses, ultimately it was to serve a problem for profit, and they have managed to get excess profit. And in some way, there's that urge and the need to give. And giving in itself is when people engage in philanthropy, we'd like to believe that they are engaging in specific areas that mean something to them. So ultimately, it will always lead back to governance, where what is our shared history? If you have a shared history of maybe the founder of the business, it could be the grandfather, it could be the father, it could be the mother, the grandmother, used to walk vast distances to be able to go to school, to get an education. And if it wasn't for their tenacity and maybe an opportunity, a relative paid for school fees or something along their story, their struggle allowed them to be able to succeed and then ultimately form the business that has ultimately formed the wealth. Or sometimes it could be a near and dear family member has got an ailment or passes because of an ailment. It could be a cancer, it could be the community that a member of the family has grown up in, has got certain aspects of it that are causing the next gen in that community to not be able to succeed. There's so many areas in which giving is applied to in our daily basis, and that way we see donors giving funds, foundations giving funds, individuals giving funds, and that's what we call philanthropy. being able to gauge whether it's successful or not is a responsibility that I think next gens and even current gens are very interested in. In the past, we've seen the backlash of what happens when philanthropy is given because of guilt. And I think one of the reasons why we've had issues with philanthropy, especially in continents like Africa, is that philanthropy initially, when it was engaged in Africa, was to soothe guilt. Whereas in wanted to soothe guilt of colonialism, we're trying to soothe guilt of slavery, we're trying to soothe guilt of extraction. So let's throw as much money as possible there to help in the areas that might be able to uplift the continent. And there was no thinking of impact or long-term. And this philanthropic fund started getting abused. Then we started seeing donors getting tired. They no longer wanted to give because they felt, well, I'm giving, but I'm not seeing where this money is going. That's where the whole impact conversation started, because that conversation started around what is really happening to the funds that are going? Where is this money going? Is it making a change? And ultimately, when families have worked hard for this wealth and they're saying that they're giving, they want to see that there is some sort of result to this giving. They're not going to throw money away. They're not going to just give because they have excess money. And I think ultimately that reasoning where people think that there is excess money is bad judgment on any part, because yes, they've managed to make more than would make them comfortable to live a comfortable life. However, they're saying with the excess money, I could do anything else. I can keep on building my businesses. I can invest in something else that makes me more money. But I would like to then address issues in my community, in my society, in issues that are close to my heart, to be able to make a change in a positive way, to create opportunities for others. That's what philanthropy ultimately is. We're trying to solve problems that other people can't solve because they don't have the resources available to them. And ultimately, we want to know, we want to understand where's this money going? What is it being used for? And there has to be accountability. And so if we speak about just giving and no accountability, then it's no longer philanthropy. We're just giving away money and it should get another name. But if we're giving in a way where we want to see change, then that means we're trying to be responsible enough to say, you know what, we've come from these spaces. We know what this looks like. And we've heard what the people in these spaces look like. And we have got the resources available to make a difference. And we want to see what the difference is, because that's ultimately why we're giving.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Nancy. Thank you for that. That's very, very enlightening. Thank you. So it just makes a case for giving and ensuring that there's impact in how we give. And all this giving as a result of tax break, tax benefits, and all that. I think we probably need to look a lot more outward, just like you said, as against it just being an only inward perspective to our giving. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Professor Aisha, I'm going to ask you, as we are rounding up now, what structures, as a wealthy Muslim family or individual, what structure can I employ in my giving? You're muted if you're speaking.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, could you repeat your question?
Yes,
Mercy,
yes. So what I said is that we are advising Muslim families, wealthy Muslim families. What structures would you advise them to adopt or to use in their giving?
Okay, so there are several structures available, but the most important principle that needs to encompass any type of structure for giving and philanthropy is that there has to be transparent governance, and what the other panelists have talked about, a very good reporting mechanism. There has to be a purpose aligned, and the outcomes or the goals have to be set forward from the outset as to what we're trying to, or what impact we're trying to achieve, and how is that related to the legacy that we're trying to develop. Uh, Islamically speaking, there is the concept of WAP, where you can set aside an amount and for charity, and then there is like a trust, and then based on that trust, then a business can be set up, and that the profits that you receive from that can be then allocated to different charitable givings or different philanthropy. We now see the approach of more towards creating sustainable employment with regards to having communities expand on their skills, expand on their ability to entrepreneurial abilities and ability to generate resources for themselves rather than a one-time giving. Empower communities, empower marginalized communities, sometimes minorities, sometimes women, to help themselves in a more sustainable way. Some approaches that can be used are social incubators, and also you see microfinance initiatives carried out by different philanthropies and different businesses, family businesses. So this is again, I'd like to repeat that the important at the outset is that there has to be purpose and transparent governance mechanisms by way of which this wealth that is allocated to philanthropy, the impact is assessed, and we are really making a difference, a noticeable difference to the communities that we are allocating funds to.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aisha. I like I said, and almost like I'm repeating myself, you cannot underestimate the purpose, the collective purpose, the vision, and the values that you want espoused in your giving. And just like you rightly said, that also sits squarely with Islamic families as well, and within the Islamic religion, being able to ensure that there's a purpose that goes before every other thing that you do, and that is for the community, that is for the good of, or like you will call it, for the good of the community. So Nancy, as we're rounding up, I want to ask you, when you're speaking with families, when you're advising families, wealthy families, or just families that are passionate about charitable giving, how do they decide between, because I know you run a global organization, so how do families decide between cross-border giving and also local giving? It's just amazing that you will find a lot of cross-border givings that are done by these families. How do they structure their giving in such a way so that we that are here, we can know that it doesn't have to be just within our immediate locality. We can actually also have cross-border giving. So how do families decide to give to engage in cross-border giving from your own experience in Chapel and York? Because I know you do a lot of international work as well.
I think the answer to that is that families are so different because people are so different. So you have people who have left a location and that want to give back to where they've come from. You have people who want to solve a problem which is only in certain locations, whether that's saving elephants in Africa or the Great Barrier Reef. You have to give to that area. They may be interested in a particular type of activity, which the best part of that activity is done by in another country. So I think it's everything. But I think that I mean, from a fundraising hat, they've always the fundraising mantra has always been people give to people. That's what's most important. I think that's got to be true, whether it's international or local, is you still want to solve a problem that's happening.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. So we do have some questions in our chat, in our questions, and I'll have to give a special shout out to Etomilade. Etomilade was to be on our first panel, but fortunately enough, he's able to join us in this second panel. Yeah, I think he said it was 3 a.m. At the call time. Etomi, do you want us to see you? But what Etomi is asking is, when we are talking about giving, do we think about the cost of giving? I think Sissy and Nancy have kind of explained on that a lot. He says any giving that costs more than 1/4 of the gifting needs to be revisited. I don't know what you mean by that, Etomi, but basically we've already denounced a lot of the practices where you have giving being based on tax benefits, tax cost, structuring it around. It is not a problem, a challenge, in the fact that there is still gifting, there's still giving that has to be done, but it's more or less like articulating a purpose behind the giving, and that's what it's all about. It's about the fact that you give today, you are able to give tomorrow as well. So maybe you will speak to that. I will come to you and I will give you the time for you to make your contributions, just to honor and respect the fact that you were able to get up midnight where you are. You tell us your location. But Nancy, the other question for you is, what is the place of GoFundMe and other similar entities in philanthropy? That's such an interesting question. So Nancy, how have you navigated the use of different, tech platforms and all that within the giving and the philanthropic space?
Well, certainly it is expanded exponentially. So things like crowdfunding, like GoFundMe, as well as the whole variety of ways that people can now support charitable organizations is just huge. And I think that, again, it very much so depends on what's appropriate both for a charity and also for the philanthropists that want to support it.
Yeah, that's very instructive. Thank you so much. So there's a lot of room for that, for the growth we are seeing within the giving community and the different structures and all that, but it still comes back to your purpose, what you are seeking to achieve, and all that. So Etomi, let's hear you. Thanks for still making our time. So please, let's hear you, and maybe you throw more light on what you were trying to say here.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's still morning here. I'm Etomi Odola. I was at the first session, actually. I attended the first session. That it was quite an enlightening session, so there was no need to interject with what the resource persons were saying. Okay, coming to my first issue regarding the cost of giving. When I sent that question, I wasn't looking at it from the angle of the tax benefits to the donors. I'm looking at it from the angle of the advisors and then the executors of the instructions, particularly when such a giving is testamentary in nature. I've had the privilege to sit in committees and boards where we were trying to carry out the instruction of the testator. And one thing I realized was that the focus most of the time of those that implemented that, okay. So the focus most times of those that implement most of these instructions tend to focus more on the program itself, how to make the program grandiose, among others. But the moral part for me is, if at the end of the day, the cost of organizing such an event is more than 1/4 of the cost, or more than the 1/4 of the gift you are giving, then whatever program has been put in place has to be revisited. Because the ultimate goal, as the resource persons we've had so far have reinforced from time to time, is the impact of the gift itself. And that's the objective of the donors. And such an objective must not be compromised in the name of, in any guise. So that's where the angle I'm coming from. And then talking about the crowdfunding part of it, yes, we tend to focus on family wealth and the likes, but the basis of giving originally, if you look at the historical basis of giving in our society, is communal in nature, and crowdfunding takes us back to that communal giving. It doesn't focus, there's no emphasis, or it de-emphasizes, it tends to de-emphasize focusing on an individual or a family, to focusing on how do we as individuals, beyond looking for foreign donors, or how do we impact our society, even with the little we have. So, and crowdfunding readily comes into this. I don't know if advisors are looking into how to use crowdfunding to achieve the objectives of giving in our society. I know that we have various organizations, foundations that do not go to donors, but look at individuals, how probably a student can give $1, less than $1.50, and we put this together to achieve so much in the society. I have seen a community of people that comes together to give less than $1 on a monthly basis, and they are sending more than 500 children to school through that. So it's just a form of encouragement for us to probably cast our searchlight on this part of philanthropy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Etomi. That was very, very insightful. So we're going to go one minute each for our rounding comments and anything we want to bring to light. Sisi, if you are here, because I know you have to dash out now, you would want to just let us have your closing comments.
Yes, thank you so very much. And thank you once again to all my co-panelists and for Mercy and your team for putting on such a great event. My final comments on philanthropy are that, especially on the African continent, philanthropy is something that we have practiced for many generations in its various forms. And we should continue to encourage our wealthy families to engage in it responsibly, as well as to structure their governance in a way that their philanthropy has continuity, as well as use philanthropy as a bridging gap between the generations, because it's a space where we can collaborate and get to truly know each other. Because when we give from a place of truly caring for others, and through that we can then increase the communication between ourselves as a family. So by engaging the exterior, we are ultimately building the interior of our families, and it becomes something that the whole of the continent and the communities that we serve through our businesses, as well as through our giving, truly benefit. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sisi. Yeah, it's been fantastic having you as usual, as always. Thank you. Yeah, so till next time then, do take care. Nancy, yeah, your closing remarks.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me, and I hope you found that I've been able to add something to this wonderful session.
Absolutely.
I think that for me, it is that these days we talk about philanthropy so much in terms of the various options and the various ways that we do things in the best way, and that you need to do philanthropy right. But I think that what we sometimes forget is that anybody who wants to do anything whether it's if it's a donation, impact investing, helping someone in a local village. Every act of philanthropy needs to be celebrated, and the person celebrated for doing it. And there is no such thing as right philanthropy. Anything is wonderful, and we need to remind ourselves and people that it is so.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Nancy, for that. Okay. Professor Aisha, your closing remarks.
Thank you, Mercy, for having me, and thank you to your team and my fellow panelists. It was a very insightful conversation that we had today. Hubris, in families of wealth that I work with, hubris is a destructive force within families of wealth. I think philanthropy is a transformative force which mitigates hubris, because it creates humility, it creates this introspection within members of families to look again beyond past their individual selves and look towards the community as a whole. So I think that in today's conversation, a key takeaway for families in business, families of wealth, is not think of wealth only in terms of ownership, but rather transcend and move towards responsible stewardship and becoming responsible custodians of wealth that the Creator has given to them, and impacting as many lives as they can with a purpose. Because for families, purpose is what is going to, a unified shared purpose is what is going to keep the family together and keep the business sustainable, rather than a single-minded pursuit of wealth maximization.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. Abdulhakeem, yeah, please, your final comments.
Thank you very much for having me and for giving me opportunity to sit along expertise around the globe. If you ask me what my last concluding part would be, is just to end with one of the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who says that even if it is just a smile, it is an act of philanthropy. So this is a message I'm saying to anybody on this call, that you don't have to necessarily own the half of the wealth of the world before you can be a philanthropy. You can do that by being generous, by being keeping a smiling face to people. Let them see that they are welcome. Even if you don't have the resources, let them know that you can help. And that is just speaking to the fact that everybody in the world needs help, and the fact that poverty does not reckon with color, or does not reckon with language or worship. So it is a general phenomenon. So wherever we find ourselves and we are able to, let us enjoy and also make sure that we give as much as we can without discrimination. Thank you very much.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that fantastic one. Thank you. Etomi, so you have the floor and you could just close out for us. So yeah, so let's have your concluding comments and any other thing that you want to share, you share with us and also share with the panelists.
Okay. Thanks so much, everyone, and thanks for gracing this event. It's a real privilege having the caliber of resource persons across the world that we've had today, and I must say that the sessions have been quite enlightening. Giving is part of us, and everyone in life gives what he has. So the question is, what do you have to give? I appreciate the organizers of this event. I believe we are still going to have more of this in the future. It's a global learning for everybody. We appreciate the contribution of all the facilitators. And I believe that each time First Fiduciary calls on us, we'll always be there to respond. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So thank you so much, Nancy. It's been awesome speaking with you. Yeah, it's been a delight speaking with you and just sharing your knowledge and such vast knowledge, very insightful conversations that I've had and a lot of learnings. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. We do not take it for granted. It's been an honor to have you. Thank you so much. Same here too with Professor Aisha. I know you're all the way in Pakistan and you still joined us. Thank you so much for your time and keep doing the good work that you are already doing. Abdul Hakim as well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the perspectives you've brought in into the conversation. And we do trust that when we call on you for other sessions that you will be willing to also join us and enrich our conversation. So it's been a delight to have this session. It's been a delight to speak through the trends and dynamics that are shaping the lives and legacies of affluent and high net worth individuals. Over the course of the webinar, we've x-rayed the issues of family dynamics. We've come to understand what they are and how we could work around with the right advisors to be able to ensure that the issues that would arise, whether with the mental incapacity, diminished capacity, or declining capacity of anyone in the family can be appropriately taken care of, as well as how we can preserve our digital assets. We've also discussed that as well. And we looked extensively into philanthropy and x-rayed how next gens, rising generations are connecting with philanthropy, African philanthropy, what are the things that drive us, as well as from an Islamic perspective as well, sustainability and philanthropy, and how we can better connect with our community, knowing fully well that we have to start with purpose. We have to articulate our purpose as a family. We have to understand what our wealth is to be used for, and we have to make sure that at the end of the day, the legacies that we are leaving, they are sustainable, and they are the ones that the rising gen will be happy to take into the future and ensure that at the end of the day, we have multi-generational, thriving, and harmonious families. So it's been a pleasure having everyone here. We look forward to the next edition of our webinars. And on a final note, we say thank you to everyone. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking with everyone. So till next time, thank you, everyone, and bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
Nancy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye,
Yeah, thank
Thank
Professor
you.
Aisha.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye,
Bye.
Udruola. Yeah. And Mercy. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye. Take care.
Mercy, bye. We get to
Yeah,
talk.
yeah. How are you?
I'm
I'm
okay.
so sorry. I didn't even know you were at the first panel.
I was.
Oh my. I didn't know. I would have, but I don't know why you weren't spotlighted. If I'd seen you, I saw you spotlighted in the second. I didn't see you spotlighted in the first one, but the second one you were, right, you were centered. So I could see, I had no idea. And